everyone, and welcome to another Camera Jabber video. Today I'm delighted to be speaking to Sam Pilling from Sony, and he's kindly agreed to tell us a little bit about the ZV-1. Hi Sam, how are you?
Hi Angela, I'm great, thanks for having me.
Great, I love your background.
Thank you very much. It took me a while to paint, but I think it's worth it for lockdown. It's nice to have this background here to be able to Zoom or do video conferencing whenever I need it. I just need to make sure it's nice and clean.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, you've been using the ZV-1 for a little while. Could you tell us a bit more about it, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting concept that we've gone for a completely different direction. We've, from the bottom up, designed a camera which is aimed at vloggers. And for us, we recognize that vloggers have got certain needs and it's a growing market. We actually did some research and we found that children in the UK now, their preferred profession is actually to be a vlogger or an influencer. So it's a really important part of the market where we want to provide certain technologies to the end user who are going to really appreciate the difference it makes to their video. And that's not necessarily aimed at people who are really into video. They might want to talk about cosmetic products, they might want to talk about gaming, they might want to talk about model cars online, and it provides them with an easy to use solution that they can just pick up and start shooting professional looking videos with. I have it here, it's relatively small, it's relatively compact, and it's being designed to appeal, like I say, to vloggers. So it has a really good microphone, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It has a side folding 180-degree screen, so that doesn't affect anything that you might want to sit in the Hotshoe. It has a wide angle lens and video image stabilization, which will really make sure that if you're walking with the product, you'll get much smoother video. And there's a whole heap of other little inventions, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, which will make life easier for the vlogger. And to some people, it looks familiar. It looks a little bit like an RX100 perhaps, but there's only certain technologies that the two products share. It has the great ability to take fantastic stills and video in the same way as an RX100 and shares some common technologies, but it is a new concept. It is a new product.
Does it actually have the same sensor?
It has a similar sensor. We wouldn't describe it as being the same sensor as one of our existing cameras because usually they're wired slightly differently or they incorporate different technologies. It has exactly the same Bion's X processor and the same LSI, so you get incredibly fast processing and you'll get the same benefits as the 1-inch sensor that you find in our RX100 series. So fast phased autofocus, and that's really important. Great low light performance and fantastic dynamic range.
And of course, it's got the real-time IAF as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, and really importantly, it has real-time IAF for video. So this is something that we introduced with products like the A6600. Usually, in previous generations, our cameras would use face detection in order to focus during video. And the ZV-1, because it's quite often going to be held up quite close to the face of a vlogger who's talking to the camera, it uses eye autofocus when shooting video in order to make sure that video is pin sharp. And that's really important because usually for vloggers, they quite often use a shallow depth of field and a blurred background. And by tracking where the eye is, we make sure that video is absolutely pin sharp.
And there's also a new feature for enabling people who aren't used to controlling aperture to help them blur the background, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. This camera's got a maximum aperture of f1.8 up to wide angle or f2.8 telephoto. So it's really easy to achieve a really defocused background. But if you're, say, someone who isn't that interested in video or photography and doesn't necessarily understand aperture, we have a background defocus dedicated button located on the top of the camera. Now, this is a custom key, so if you are into your stills and video, you want to change it to something else, you can do, but hitting that button will switch between a blurred or a sharp background. So if you're talking about travel and you want the background to be in focus, that's very easy to achieve. If you want that more cinematic appeal of a defocused background and you're telling more of a monologue perhaps to the camera, hit the background defocus button and it'll change the settings accordingly. And one of the great things about this camera is it has a built-in ND filter. So even if you're outside in a bright situation and you want to blur your background, and in general in video, shutter speeds are really important. People go by a rule of thumb of you shoot at double the shutter speed of your resulting video, so you don't be messing with shutter speed. That ND filter in combination with ISO is incredibly useful to making sure you don't overexpose your shots.
Okay, that's really useful. And just to be clear, using that focus switch, it's not actually doing any kind of magic AI like you get with a phone. It actually is to do with changing the aperture to get the natural blur.
Absolutely, that's a really good point. Yes, we have got mobile phones which have that feature available. Previously, we've done compact cameras which have tried to achieve a background defocus effect. If you think back to the days of things like HX20, which is quite a while ago now, this is pure aperture. We have that fantastic Zeiss lens, and it'd be a shame not to use it to its full capability. So yes, hitting that button will switch to a really wide aperture as opposed to any sort of jiggery pokery.
So speaking of the lens, that's equivalent of 24 to 70, isn't it? Focal length.
Absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, if you're shooting in video, there's a slight difference, and in 4K, it actually becomes around about 28 mil. But it's a familiar lens. Users of RX100 Mark V will find it's got a familiar feel to it, but it's slightly different because of the way that we use our image stabilization technology and a few other little tweaks.
Okay, and there's a face priority mode as well, which should be useful when shooting video.
Yes, thanks for mentioning that. This is a totally new feature for the ZV-1. Previously, we've been very, very good at focusing the camera using face detection, eye autofocus, those sorts of features. But previously with your exposure, you've had a wide variety of choices, such as center spot, balanced, exposed for highlights. But previously, we've never actually taken the exposure based on where the face is. So now, even if you're not in the center of your shot, the camera will change its exposure to suit whatever environment you're in. And this is really suited to the sort of person who's going to walk and talk to the camera. So I always think of walking under, where I live, there's a lot of canals and there's a lot of bridges. And if you're talking to the camera, you walk on a bright summer's day underneath a canal bridge, it'll suddenly go incredibly dark. With this new feature, it'll make sure that the exposure is kept on your face and your face is kept bright, even if that's at the expense of some of the highlights. For a vlogger, that's the most important thing. If they're telling a story to a camera, or if they're talking while they're traveling, their face is the key focus of that video. So it makes perfect sense to take the exposure from that area. And the transition is really smooth as well. It doesn't dramatically jump about from being underexposed to overexposed, back and forth. It's a smooth transition of making sure your face is correctly exposed for the video.
I guess the beauty of that is it's happening automatically, so you don't have to reach and adjust any settings, and it's completely silent as well.
Spot on, yeah. I mean, if you are a vlogger, even if you understand exposure and you do want to change those settings, the last thing that you want to do is pausing halfway through a video, if, like I say, you are walking and talking to the camera, to alter your exposure settings. And alternatively, you don't want to completely disappear to your video. And this has been extensively tested with a wide range of races and of ages as well. And it also incorporates our new skin tone technology. We also have the ability now to smooth skin. And this is something that you can turn off. The default is medium, but this new technology is able to work out where the eyes, nose and mouth are and keep those areas sharp, so it doesn't have a weird cartoonish appeal.
Well, that's really interesting. I look forward to trying that. I might crank it up to maximum.
Well, it's completely customizable. You can set it to off, low, medium or high, and it's well worth having a play with it and seeing what suits you. Personally, I quite like the medium setting because, like I say, features like my nose, eyes and mouth remain sharp, whereas other sorts of blemishes can be smoothed out and reduced.
Nice, yeah. And particularly, I guess if you're shooting in 4K, I mean, that can be quite harsh, shall we say, on skin textures. So it might be nice just to smooth things out a little bit.
Absolutely. In this modern age, we now have 4K makeup technicians. We now have our soaps, which have been, most of the pubs in soaps these days have been burnt down in the past 5 years in order for them to replace the set with a new 4K compatible set because the previous sets weren't up to the demands of modern video. So yeah, your face is no different. You need to make sure that you look great in this new technology.
Now, you were talking about walking with the camera. I assume it's, well, I know it's got improved image stabilization. How has that been achieved?
So previously you were shooting video with an RX series camera, you'd probably be using optical image stabilization, which we still have in this camera. It's a great way of making sure you get sharper stills and smoother video. but we've also incorporated an extra level of electronic image stabilization. That means that we can compensate for a wider area of movements. There's a slight crop, so you do get a slightly smaller view of field, but the key thing is that if you are walking and talking to the camera, your video becomes almost gimbal-like, extremely smooth, so it looks great, especially like you say with 4K video. It's the same with 4K video. Tiny little wobbles can look huge on today's modern TV screens. And I, as you would expect, I've got a Sony TV, it's a Sony Android TV, and I watch a huge amount of YouTube via the integrated app. So I'm actually watching YouTube back on a big 55-inch screen, and in 4K, tiny little wobbles can look like small earthquakes.
And it can be the difference between having watchable footage and something that's really quite nauseating, can't it?
Absolutely, and it's really important. And again, if you don't know a huge amount of video, if you don't know a huge amount about how to capture the best possible footage, the default for the camera is to have it on. But if you want to turn off the electronic image stabilization, or if you want to turn off image stabilization completely, you can do. It just means that straight out of the box, certain features are turned on so that if you're not that interested in photography, I know that seems alien to us, Angela, but if you're not that interested in photo and video, you can just take these products out and you can get incredible video, and also importantly, you can get incredible sound.
Oh, now, touching on sound, what can you tell us about the mic, please?
So, great point. Yeah, it's a brand new microphone. It's actually a 3-capsule microphone. So a standard Sony CyberShot would have a dual capsule microphone, which is basically a stereo microphone, a separate left and right channel. However, this new microphone is 3-module. It has a center channel. And the point of that is it can really pick out your voice and isolate you from the background noise. We have clear voice audio technology in there. We also have wind reduction technology as well. I'm sure we'll come back to that. But the microphone itself is really flush to the top of the camera. Quite often with our cameras, they're found on the front. With this, it's really flush to the top so that it picks up less wind noise. And it's really large, so it can capture lots of audio. And it doesn't capture the audio of the zoom importantly as well. So if you're zooming in and out, you get really clear audio. And if you want to, there's still a audio input jack on the side. So if you want to use a lapel mic, you can do. Or alternatively, you could go for one of the dedicated Sony microphones through the Hotshoe.
And does it prioritize audio from in front of the camera or behind, or is it split between the two?
So in normal recording, it uses its clear voice audio technology to try and single out you, especially because it is aimed at that sort of person that will be talking to the camera. But again, it's customizable, and you can alter your audio recording depending on what you're shooting. For the vast majority of people who are going to be using it for vlogging, it'll be important to separate that center channel with a bit of ambient noise if required.
And I noticed you've taken it off now, but it's got a little windshield. Does that come in the box?
It does, absolutely. The windshield, which for us is something totally unique due to the size of it, it's quite a significant windshield, but it makes a huge difference. The first time I recorded video on the ZV-1, I did it in the north of England on a particular windy day, and I used, to record the initial bit of video, a different piece of kit without a muffler on top of it. It was actually an RX0 Mark II, which is a great little camera, but I picked up a certain amount of wind noise with it. When I then switched to this, and it's great because it just slides straight into the multi-interface shoe and just sits on top of the camera, it makes a world of difference. But again, if you're shooting indoors and you don't like the look of that on the top of your camera, it's very, very easy just to slide out of the Hotshoe and quickly switch between the two.
Well, that's really useful that it just slides on and off like that.
Yeah, it's a really clever design. If you want to use the Hotshoe for other accessories, then the Hotshoe is still a full Sony multi-interface shoe. So like I say, if you wanted to plug one of our video lights into there, or if you wanted to plug one of our external microphones, then you absolutely could do. I actually think that most people are going to find that the camera does a fantastic job with the built-in microphone, and will mostly use it in this particular setup.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think many people will. And another feature I wanted to talk about was the product showcase. That's quite interesting. Could you just explain that, please?
Yeah, so again, this is brand new to this camera, and it's again something which will be really relevant to YouTubers. Quite a lot of people want to carry out product reviews on camera, but quite a lot of times that won't be product reviews of cameras, it'll be of a wide variety of different subjects. The default for this camera is to prioritize my face, to use eye autofocus to make sure that my face is sharp. But what if I hold something up to the camera that I want to talk about, particularly if it's a small item like a mascara or something like that? If you hit the product showcase setting, it no longer prioritizes the face. It will focus on the nearest item to the camera. And we're using extremely fast phase autofocus. We have 315 phase autofocus points, so the camera can jump focus in 0.03 seconds. So if I was to hold something up to a ZV-1, it would instantly switch to that, and then when I drop it back down, it will focus on me again. And it's something that I never really saw before the ZV-1. When I've been watching reviews of products online, or even when, weirdly, I've been watching Sunday Brunch on Channel 4, you see people talking about products, or in case of Sunday Brunch, ingredients, and I've seen them holding them up to the camera with a flat palm behind to make focusing quicker for the camera because it's a larger surface area to try and focus on. I'd never seen it before. Obviously with ZV-1, you're telling the camera, you don't need to prioritize me over everything. I'm going to be showing you things. So hitting that button will make sure it quickly switches to whatever it is you want to talk about.
So if you were going to film a clip where you want to hold a product up after, say, a minute of chatting, you would select that setting, start talking to camera, it would focus on your face, then you hold your product up and it would focus on that.
Yes, you don't need to hit it halfway through recording. It's
Right.
still great at making sure your face is in focus, but when you hold something out, in normal recording mode, it will prioritize your face over everything. In product showcase setting, it knows that there's going to be other things involved. So your face may not always be in focus if there's something nearer to the camera that's being held up to show the product off.
Okay. And of course, let's not forget, it's got a vari-angle screen, which is something of a first, isn't it?
Yes, and this is something which makes life a lot easier. You have that large microphone on the top of the camera, the large windbreak, and because we have the self-swinging screen, it means that there's no interference between the two. We can also put products in the Hotshoe and there'll be no interference with the screen. So it's clearly something which vloggers are going to enjoy, and something which I think in normal use for selfies and things like that will be really useful as well. And it really does rotate through a variety of different angles, up, down, left and right. And also it can be used to turn the camera on and off by folding the screen in and out. If you don't like that feature though, you can deactivate it.
So Sam, are there any particular accessories that you'd recommend for using with the camera?
There is one key accessory in particular amongst all the microphones and lights that you could use with the camera, and it's this. It's the VPT2BT. It's not exactly clear from its name what it does, but it's actually a combination of a grip, as you can see. It's also a tripod, so I can sit the camera down and the head can move through 180 degrees and a variety of angles up and down. But the clever part of this particular product is that it has a set of controls on it. So I can zoom the camera, I can start and stop video recording, I can take still images, and I can also have a custom key which I could either use to do defocus background or product showcase setting. The default is defocus background. The nice thing about it is it's got built-in Bluetooth, so I can actually use this as a wireless commander. So say if I was doing some vlogging and I wanted a bit of variation in my shot, if I wanted to maybe set the camera down on a wall and do a piece to camera which was set a little bit further back, I could still control the start and stop of recording and the zoom or the background defocus using the handy grip accessory.
And I guess the grip would also be useful for, like, if you're walking along doing a piece to camera, as you say, or you can set it down somewhere as a little tripod.
Because you can tilt it a variety of different angles, it's great for sort of holding the camera that little bit further out. So if you're after capturing a bit more of your background and you want to be able to hold the camera that little bit further, or if you want to start and stop recording quite quickly and move from one area to the other, then yeah, it's great to use as a grip. And because it's got the 180-degree rotation on it, you can also use it to hold it up above a crowd or use it to film other things from a variety of different angles.
And is that sold just by itself, or can it be bought as a part of a kit with the camera?
There is a variety of options. You can buy it on its own, and it will be found in store for around about £180. Or alternatively, there is currently a kit running where the grip is half price at £90 approximately.
Okay, well, Sam, thanks very much for taking us through the key features. It looks like a really interesting camera.
Yeah, it's a great piece of kit, and don't let me make you think that it's not aimed at professionals as well. There's a whole host of other features such as S-Log, different color spaces that will really appeal to pro users as well. So it's great for easy use, but it's also got some serious pro features if you want to take your vlogging to the next level.
Okay, thanks very much, Sam. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Angela. Bye.